Okay, so hopefully we're kind of get back to this. Okay, so when we look at an example like this, okay, this is a long, pretty much a paragraph, right? This is from the World Bank. They do a monthly assessment of Thailand's economy, and I edited it. So this is an example. Let's take a look at it together. Let's take a couple minutes. What could we change about this? Okay. Once again, there's not any grammatical mistakes, or there's no problems necessarily with grammar, but how can we make it easier, faster? Okay. So we have tourism arrivals reached 57% of the pre-pandemic level in January, down from 59% in the previous month. The pace of recovery slowed because of the falling number of arrivals from Asia, especially from India, due to its COVID testing requirement before returning from Thailand in January. The testing requirement was subsequently abandoned on February 13th. Though arrivals from China in January remain low after the relaxation of Chinese travel restrictions at 9% of pre-pandemic level in 2019, the number is increased by 70% and is expected to recover strongly in 2023. Any ideas? What do we see here? Maybe not as much in the beginning, but then around here, the pace of recovery slowed because of the falling number of arrivals from Asia, especially from India, due to its COVID testing requirement before returning to Thailand in January. What do we think about that?
So especially part, right? This is like the cause of the incident.
Yes, exactly. And it's going to, so we have India, now we're going to explain why, okay? And then we have this tag sentence here that the testing requirement was subsequently abandoned. So what happened here? The pace slowed. Why? Lower arrivals. Why? Because India implemented this COVID testing, right? So this part here seems to be a little bit unclear, right? We need to clarify this. We need to make India had this COVID testing, but now they ended it, okay? That needs to be its own idea, rather than just mentioning it as an explanation and then tagging on, oh, by the way, they ended it, right? So we want to address this idea as a whole altogether, right? That makes it clearer for the audience, the reader, to understand. All right. So that obviously is a good one. What about the second part? Though arrivals from China in January remain low after the relaxation of Chinese travel restrictions at 9% of pre-pandemic level in 2019, the number increased by 70% and is expected to recover strongly in 2023. Once again, no real problems. Maybe we're missing a comma here or there. But what's the big problem with this sentence? What do you think? Though arrivals from China in January remain low after the relaxation of Chinese travel restrictions at 9% of the pre-pandemic level in 2019, the number increased by 70% and is expected to recover strongly in 2023. It's quite a mouthful, right? It's too much. Let's break it up. Okay. Also, use commas. Commas are our friends. So let's take a look at what we can do to maybe increase the comprehension, the clarity here. So rather than tourism arrivals, tourists, what are they? They're tourists, okay? So tourist arrivals reached 57% of the pre-pandemic numbers, down from 59% in December. What did I do here? I took out what? I took out January. I changed previous month to December. Why? because this is an economic report for that month of January, okay? So that's why I don't need to refer to January. And of course, the previous month will be December. So when we do this, guys, we want to limit our words, make it faster. Pre-pandemic level, whatever, that can be changed or not. The recovery slowed. Guys, the pace of recovery, the same thing, pace and slowing, you don't need to talk about it. You could just say the recovery slowed. The pace of recovery, it's the same thing, extra words, we don't need it. If you're talking about speed, you're talking about pace, okay? So you can get rid of that. The recovery slowed as arrivals from Asia fell, especially from India. Okay, now, its own idea. Now I'm going to explain what happened in India, okay? That's easier, it's more consumable, okay? So here we have, in January, the country, India, implemented a COVID testing requirement before returning from Thailand, okay? However, the testing requirement was subsequently abandoned on February 13th. So we make it more consumable. What are we talking about? We mentioned from India, now we're going to explain about India, okay? Leave it to be its own idea, its own understanding, its own detail, its own piece of information. Keep, I would say maybe quadrants or sections of information together. No need to separate them, as in the previous example where we had this extra sentence at the end. Then we have, though January's arrivals from China remain low at just 9% of 2019's numbers, since the relaxation of travel restrictions, the number has increased by 70% and is expected to recover strongly in 2023. Why is this better? Okay, because when I break it up, okay, at 9%, all this, it's a bit extra. We don't need to. Though January's arrivals from China remain low at just 9% of 2019's numbers, okay, since the relaxation, keep it separate, okay? The number increased since remained low after the relaxation of Chinese travel restrictions at 9%. That's too much. Since, keep it simple. It's the same meaning, fewer words, okay? So anytime you're writing, think, is this the easiest way that I could say this? Do I need this extra phrase or word, okay?
How about if you want to sound sophisticated?
You know, there's sophistication can come more from your vocabulary than the sentence structure, okay? Though sentence structure, it does add sophistication. I would say that if you are trying to use a sentence structure that's too complicated and it confuses the audience, that won't make you sound more sophisticated at it. Or maybe the audience will just think, wow, that sentence was too difficult for me to understand. Must be very sophisticated. Let's take a look at another one. Okay, so giving context and avoiding abstractions. So now we're moving on from just making your words fewer, easier to understand. Now we're going to say, okay, what am I missing? Sometimes when we write academic work, there are clearly some things that you know that the audience doesn't know, that the reader doesn't know. So we need to understand the audience. What do they know? If you are writing for a very widely spread publication, you need to understand that your audience could be maybe lay people. If you are writing your article for a publication where the average person that reads it is going to be an expert in the field, you are probably allowed to use different language and just understand that your audience will understand it, okay? We'll get it. So another thing, set the stage for your research. Tell your story, okay? that is one of the things I notice a lot of us in the beginning, in the abstract, telling the story of how you came up with this idea, we tend not to really tell the story in an attractive way. This is the pursuit of knowledge, and it should be something a little bit interesting. So this is MF and Kim's example here.
How dare you?
Yeah. So this is, and we will be looking at other members of this team's examples as well. These are all just first drafts, guys, or second drafts. These were not meant to be shared, but I think they're useful for us, okay? So we have, basing on Kacharu's 3 concentric circles, 24 universities from different contexts was collected and literature courses were found. The online resource systematically arranged the information of literary curricula in terms of course title, course description, and reading lists. I have a lot of questions when I read this, okay? My first question, guys, this first part here, basing on Kacharu's 3 concentric circles. What question can I ask here?
What did you base?
Exactly. What are we talking about? What's based on Kacharu's 3 concentric circles? How do we say it? Kacharu. Okay. So what is based? The study, the research, this idea, right? 24 universities from different contexts was collected, and what was collected, right? 24 universities from different contexts was collected, okay, and the blank literature courses were found. What was collected, right? We don't know. You need to explain it. Finally, the online research systematically arranged the information of literary curricula in terms of course title, course description, and reading lists. What's this? What's the online resource? Have we talked about it before? We need to introduce this. And in this example, they had not mentioned it before. So anytime we maybe introduce something important, we need to make it clear to the audience, okay? So let's take a look at what we could do here, okay? Give some context. Basing the study on Kacharu's 3 concentric circles of English, okay? Concentric circles of what? Of English, right? Explain it. We compiled the course information. Okay, what was compiled, right? Course information of literature courses in 24 universities of varied English language backgrounds. So obviously, I didn't know this just from looking at this. I needed to ask and find out. When you write your paper, make sure that the audience isn't going to be like, what? Who? Where is it? What's this? What's the online? I didn't know about that. Make it clear. And then an online resource was developed. So this was the big thing that was shocking. The online resource, guys, they made that. So they need to take credit for it, right? You need to explain what happened. You developed an online resource to systematically arrange the compiled literary curricula information in terms of course title, blah, blah, blah. So you need to take credit. When you do something, don't push it under the rug. Take credit. Put a spotlight on it. Say, hey, what did we do? We developed. Use those active verbs to show your accomplishments, okay? This is something that I think we don't do enough of in academia. You should take credit. It sounds good for the reader. The reader appreciates this. It gives your voice some ethos, okay? Another, here they're telling their story. As a result, we were lost while developing the new curriculum, as we were assigned to develop certain amount of literature courses. Lacking experiences in curriculum development, we were unsure what materials should be considered the most appropriate in each course and what the current trend in the world of literature education is, okay? So in general, I don't like ending a sentence on a verb like this. I don't prefer, I would like to end it in another way, okay? Maybe even, and find out the current trends in world literature education, period. I'm not a big fan of ending on this kind of open verb like that, you know? Also prepositions, not a big fan of that. But I kept their style. And here, okay, so when we look at this, I needed to know, okay, why were you lost? Okay, you look at this. We were lost while developing the curriculum. Why were you lost? Oh, because of the TQF1's strict credit requirements. Okay, lacking experience. Oh, so we need to talk about this, right? I have to explain, prior to the TQF1, there were no requirements on the number of literature credits offered by English program. Give it context. Explain why you were having trouble. Lacking experience in curriculum development, we were unsure what materials would be most appropriate in the construction of each course and what the current trends in the world of literature education were. You could just say, and the current trends in the world of literature education. So here, why do we need to give context? Because if you're just reading, everything's correct for the most part, grammatically, but content-wise, I have questions. Content-wise, I'm a bit unsure, okay? So are there any questions when it comes to giving context and kind of telling the story of your research, of your work? Are there any questions about this? When is it too much? That kind of depends, right? You don't want to make it too personal. Of course, we want to be a little bit, we don't want to use we, I, the team too much, right? Because then it becomes almost like a diary entry rather than an academic work. So for methodology, okay, another thing. Here we have methodology data. Data for the study were storytelling of preschool, 4 and 6-year-old, and primary school age Thai children, 9 and 11 years old. Okay. Sometimes storytelling in what way, right? I need to understand this more. Or they're verbally telling you right now, what is it? We need to know more about this. I have questions. So how could I make it? The study utilized the storytelling recordings of, okay? Sometimes you have to add the word. Sometimes you have to take away the word, okay? So in this case, because I'm introducing this methodology, I'm introducing the data we used, we will explain it, okay? After, you don't have to say recordings every time, okay? You could just say the storytelling if you want, or you could just say the recordings, and we know what it's about. Okay? So this is about taking credit for your work, your accomplishments, also evaluating your product, using adjectives, evaluating what you have done. A lot of times we are kind of modest in the way that we assess our achievements in our research. So here we have, with technology, this project offers an online resource providing the information of literature curricula in different contexts. With technology, the resource can assist educators as well as learners to explore the diversity of literary trends with the tip of their fingers and within a second. And with technology, the process of text selection in literature curriculum development will be at ease, okay? So we like this use of with technology, that repetition. It is a rhetorical device to repeat yourself. But in this case, it's also important to talk about in their project how they developed it, okay? So what could I do here to imply that the technology was created by my team? How could I do it? Instead of saying with technology, what could I say? We could use pronouns. We could use some pronouns, some subjects to take credit for this. What can we say? Our, yeah, we, our team, okay? The team. You don't have to say my, we, you can say the team, right? And then what they did, right? We created the technology, so take credit for it. The team developed, the team implemented. Use those active verbs to imply what you've done. In this case, you're just kind of explaining with technology, all of this is possible, right? But actually the big point here in your research is, hey, we made the technology, we created this program, you know, this is what we've done is useful. So how did I change that? By utilizing the current technology, this project offers a convenient resource which provides valuable information on the literature curricula of a diverse and inclusive cohort of international English programs. With the resource we have developed, educators and learners can explore the diverse literary trends of the world's best institutions and those still growing in seconds with the tip of their fingers. With this database, educators have a framework of materials from which to guide their text selection and literature curriculum development. So here, we are taking credit. We utilize the technology. We can do this together. We want you, okay, to use this. Our project can be used by others. So we give the scope, all right? Also, use those adjectives, guys. Diverse literary trends, the world's best institutions, right? Don't be afraid to use adjectives, okay? It adds power to your words as always, okay? And then finally, end on a strong, clear, active statement, okay? This is something that I think is quite important. Here, when we end our work, when we end a project, it's important to kind of assess it, have that final statement that sticks with the audience, right? We're always taught that. So we have, in addition to the exposure to the narrative, this might suggest the role of non-linguistic development, such as logic and reasoning in enforcing the children's narrative to be more powerful, okay? So, once again, grammatically, nothing wrong here. But what can we do to make this statement a little bit stronger?
Such as part should be the highlight.
Okay, yeah. I think logic and reasoning have to be focused on, right? Absolutely. The final phrase, the final phrasing of enforcing the children's narrative to be more powerful, right? This phrase, enforcing the children's narrative to be more powerful. What's another way I could say that? Enforcing the children's narrative to be more powerful, maybe I could talk about the power instead, right? Rather than assessing the children's narrative being more powerful, I could say the power is turned up of the narrative, okay? We switch the order. That way, I don't like this kind of ending on this comparative phrase more powerful, right? I want something like this. In addition to narrative exposure, this might suggest the role of non-linguistic development, such as logic and reasoning, in enhancing the power of the children's narratives. So rather than ending on this kind of comparative, make them more powerful, no. What are we going to do? We're going to enhance the power of the narratives. End it on a noun, okay? That would be stronger. That's a strong ending, okay? So that is how we can assess our achievements, or just one way that we can do this. Let's take another one. This idea might also support the concept of equality and, at the same time, the learners to enjoy and appreciate differences. Another final statement and conclusion. Let's take a moment. Let's try to rewrite this. How could I make it better? Once again, there's not a lot of problems here, but take a look at it. Let's rewrite it. Okay.
Maybe it's software that also the way that they're enjoying it because it's already more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Very good. I could absolutely agree with that. What about, what are the learners doing? Can I say that though? Can I say the learners to enjoy? So in the first part, we're using the verb support, right? And that same verb support is being applied to the learners. Support the learners to enjoy and appreciate differences. But as a reader, that is difficult to understand, okay? I'm not sure if that is if that support is going to the second part, supporting the learners. Oh, so maybe I should just use another verb there, right? So I don't have to question, what's happening to the learners at the end, right? So what could I do to maybe change that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, what verb could we use there that would be similar to support? Help, aid, yeah. Enable, enhance, yeah. Yeah, aid, yeah, you guys got it. Make it clear. So when I have it, this idea might also support the concept of equality and at the same time allow learners to enjoy and appreciate their differences. So I just used allow, okay? Enable, enhance, whatever, okay? Also, I think it helps if we talk about differences. Whose differences, right? Their differences. Make them closer together. Appreciate who they are. Because that's the one of the aspects here that we are talking about is, in this research at least, was people or the children knowing who they were and appreciating others, okay? So some more stuff about being concise. So being concise is obviously a big part of editing, okay? Using fewer words, all right? Eliminate those redundant words and phrases, okay? So here, let's get rid of some of these. Moreover, the narrative of the children has been viewed as a valuable source of information that helped us understand more about language development phenomena. Okay? So My suggestion, guys, anytime we use noun, of, okay, that tends to be something we could make a little bit smoother, faster, easier. So rather than saying the bottle of Alan, we say Alan's bottle. So even something like this. Moreover, the narrative of the children's narratives, okay, has been viewed as a valuable source of information, helps us understand more about language development, okay? Children narratives have been viewed as valuable sources of information, aiding in our understanding of the language development phenomenon, okay? So, rather than help us understand more, aid in our understanding, okay? We don't need help understand more. These are kind of similar, right? Understanding more is positive, helping is positive. Let's just use another one, aiding in our understanding. It implies the same thing. We don't have to use as many words, okay? So this is a big part, is choosing your verbs, okay? Using verbs that are somewhat, a little bit more descriptive, okay? Look at this one. In school age, on the other hand, the ability of the children in narrating a story tended to increase, obviously. Once again, we have, you got it, okay? When they reach school age, the children's ability in narrating a story obviously increased. We don't want tended to increase obviously. We will use the adverb, then talk about what it obviously increased. Okay? All right. So once again, children's ability rather than the ability of the children. All right? Look for alternate vocab. Okay? Always a good idea. Here we have the recorded audio clip, and the pictures were used for data collection. After a warming up activity to gain attention from the children, each of them was asked to join the data collection session individually, okay? Here, guys, what words are unnecessary or redundant here? Recorded, right? If it's a clip, it's recorded, right? You don't need it, okay? Okay, after a warming up activity to gain attention from the children. What is a warm-up activity? It's going to gain the attention, right? So a warm-up activity is, you're kind of being redundant here, right? We gain the students' the attention through the warm-up activity. That's the purpose of a warm-up activity, right? So you don't have to say that part. It's implied. Even a novice would understand that, so you don't have to explain it. Okay? So the audio clip and pictures were used for data collection. After a warm-up activity, each subject was asked to join the data collection session individually. So in this paper, we use the word children, 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 children. Let's use different words. Subjects, okay? Use other, don't always come back to the same vocab because it tends to get a little bit stale. Try to find other words that you can apply, okay? Subjects, samples, whatever, okay? Very good. Okay, here, in the present study, 3 stages of acquisition were proposed. The beginning stage, the developing stage, and the acquired stage. We could slash this thing apart. What could I take out here?
Stage.
Okay, yeah, get rid of stage, right? Also, the articles, I don't need the articles, okay? So I don't need stage, I don't need the articles. Anything else? Okay, yeah, you could just say the study, right? The study. You know, that's style. Some people like to say the present study. It's got that vibe to it, you know, it's very academic, right? But you could just say the study, okay? The study proposed, right? The study proposed. Make it clear. Sometimes, guys, with passive voice, should it be active? Should it be passive? Okay, the question that you can ask yourself is the person or what is doing the action, is that person important? Okay? So for example, if I'm a scientist, okay, and I want to say the levels of calcium were examined, I don't need to say the doctor, the team examined the levels. It's understood, right? So in this case, maybe we want it to be active. We want to say, hey, it's proposed. This study proposes, okay? That's absolutely acceptable, all right? The present study proposed 3 stages of acquisition: beginning, developing, and acquired.
Like if we would like to show our own credit for the result of the study, it should be active, right?
It sounds, the implication is stronger with active voice. And especially because you want to take credit, you want to say, what is saying this? What is proposing? This study, right? The less important the subject or the noun doing the verb, the more likely you can just use passive voice. And it's very, it's fun, okay? Very good, guys. So explaining a process or procedure. Are there any questions about this? Any questions so far?
So far, so good.
So far, so good? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this one. Using effective transitions, eliminating redundant words. Here we have from our mushroom article again, okay? At the end of each cooking method, samples were cooled to room temperature. After that, all trials were dried at 50 degrees Celsius for 18 hours. Subsequently, samples were ground to a finely powdered form. So we have a lot of process transition right here. At the end, after that, subsequently, right? We're talking about a process, a procedure, that's fine. But to make it smoother, we need to get rid of some of these redundant words, okay? So what could be some of these redundant words? Okay, very good. Yeah. You could change that. You could even use a shorter one. You could say then, for example, okay? Or comma and would be fine, right? So even this last part here, you could just put these two together, right? Make it a little bit smoother. How could we do that? After that, all trials were dried at 50 degrees Celsius for 18 hours. Subsequently, samples were ground to a finely powdered form. How could I make those two smoother, faster?
And organelles were dried at 50 degrees Celsius for 18 hours. And ground finely to powder.
Yeah, or you don't even have to say powder form, right? Powdered is the form. So, and ground to a fine powder. So, get rid of form. Get rid of subsequently. Use and. Make one sentence. At the end of each cooking Method, the samples were cooled to room temperature, then all specimens were dried at 50 degrees Celsius for 18 hours and subsequently ground to a fine powder. You don't even need subsequently. I would get rid of it. It's extra, unnecessary, and is subsequently. Okay? So I'm redundant even myself. It happens. All right, so getting rid of these extra words, the things that we don't need, the words that step in our way. Listings. A colon is your friend, guys. Okay? Our colons are very kind to us. Let's take a look. Being targeted as a goal of language acquisition, the narrative was, in a sense, considered as a skill that the children were to achieve, as found in the use of many different terms, such as narrative competence, narrative skills. Okay? So when I do this, so there were a bunch of other terms listed here. Okay? So when I use a colon, where would I put my colon here if I were to use one?
Different terms such as.
Okay, such as, right? I could even get rid of such as, because the colon means such as, right? So colon oftentimes can help us because it eliminates and it lets the audience know what? This is a list. This is a sequence, okay? So that is how we can do it. As a target of language acquisition, the narrative is, in a sense, considered a vital skill for children to obtain, as evidenced by its use in many different terms of language development, colon. Okay? So in this case also, I wanted to give a little bit more context, okay? It's a vital skill. Have to say its importance, right? As evidenced, as shown, okay, by its use in many different terms of language development. So what are we saying in this sentence? Why is narrative important? Well, look, it's used in all these terms, right? That is clear now, okay? That, oh, we include the term narrative in all of these terms, okay? That's what we need to understand, okay? Also, at the beginning here, being targeted as a goal of language acquisition. This phrasing here, okay, using the present continuous there, it makes it more difficult for us, right? If we're going to start with this present continuous tense, it's going to require a lot of kind of grammatical flip-flops, right? You're going to have to do a lot of dancing around to maintain a correct tense, verb tense. So instead of that, just as a target of language acquisition, the narrative is, okay? Make it clear. So I would also suggest this, guys. Having continuous tenses does not necessarily make your writing more sophisticated, okay? It's...
I think the first one is not continuous, and it's as a gerund, right?
Yeah, it's a gerund. Yeah, sure. It's a gerund, yeah.
Make it like a noun,
Mm-hmm.
but agree that as a target is
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, it's a gerund. Sure. But it's when we use the gerund form, right? Especially being, we don't often use that gerund form. Yeah, it's if we were to use the gerund form, writing, explaining, you know, it's more powerful. This since being, to be targeted, that gerund is not as commonly used. So I would avoid it and just start with as a blank, okay? To explain something's identity could be smoother. Oh.
I have a question. I'm always confused when to use past tense or present tense, know, especially.
Yes, okay, very good. So why did I use present tense here? Okay, I use present tense because when I say the narrative was, in a sense, considered a skill, is it not anymore?
So it is still a fact.
If it's still a fact, a belief, right? You be careful in how we use past tense, because past tense implies something is done and gone and over, right? So when we use it, that is the implication that the reader understands. So if I say the narrative was, in a sense, okay, so is it still? I think we want to imply here that it still is, rather than it was and now it's not. If you are going to say was, then you need to kind of yes, you need, and maybe explain why today it's different. Why the perception of something today is different, all right? So that is a very good question. The same thing, you'll notice I've done this in a few of the examples. I changed from past to present or present to past. For example, here, were proposed, the present study proposed from the passive to active, right? Here, were used, that's fine, okay? Each subject was asked. Why do we use was asked? It's the process. Passive voice in the process, explaining the procedure of something, very common and acceptable, okay? Because you don't want to always say we asked, we did, the researchers, right? You don't want to always say that. For example, here, has been viewed, okay? The narrative of the children has been viewed. In this case, right, you just use present perfect. Have been, because have been implies it's still today, okay? Have been, it implies that it's still happening today. So if it has been, it implies almost one time in the past and not so much anymore, or it's less clear. So just make it present perfect, okay? For this one, when they reach school age rather than in the school age, something like that. Sometimes our use of a preposition can be a little bit confusing. So in the school, when we talk about age, time, just when, okay? Make sure to use that to let the audience know, oh, we're talking about age, we're talking about time. In might be a little bit confusing, imply place rather than time, okay? And there's some other examples here where the learners enjoy and appreciate, allow learners to enjoy and appreciate. It just kind of depends in the moment, in that statement, past, present perfect, maybe active, passive. You have to ask yourself what information you're really trying to communicate to the audience. Who are you trying to explain it to, and who are you trying to give credit to? Okay? So let's look at, only have one more. Here we go. Describing charts and graphs. Okay, so this one tends to be a little bit difficult. When we have our visual aid, our visual representation of the data, how do we describe it, right? It's very difficult. So my suggestion would be to look for verbs that ease that description, okay? So here, our example. From figure 4, the yellow line, 15-year-old children, covered not only the largest area, but also other colored lines, gray, orange, and blue. However, the other 3 color lines were disorderly overlapping. Okay? So, once again, nothing wrong grammatically with this. But what words are we using here, right? We have overlap, right? We have cover, right? Disorderly. Let's try and change it so that it's a little bit clearer, okay? Instead of cover, we could use another one. Instead of overlapping, disorderly overlapping, let's see if we can say it in another way. So from figure 4, the yellow line, 15-year-old children, covers, okay, covers. Once again, we changed it from past to present. Why? Because you're looking at the graph, right? The graph is not in the past, the graph is happening right now. So you're describing what is going on in that graph. And if I'm going to describe this screen, I'm not going to say the black was on the left. I'm going to say the black is on the left, right, of the screen. So when you describe a graph in your paper, you're going to use present tense, okay? Because that reader is looking at your graph, okay? So it covers not only the largest area, but also encompasses, okay? Right-click on maybe overlap, right-click overlap, find your synonym, encompass, okay? Your thesaurus, that right-click and synonym is your best friend, right? So encompasses the other ages. So here, I'm using line, line, line. Let's use another word, right? What do the lines represent? Ages. Use that instead. The other 3 age groups irrationally overlap one another, okay? So here, you don't want to say disorderly overlapping, present, past, continuous, irrationally overlap one another, okay? Rather than disorderly, if you are going to imply maybe the findings, the numbers don't have a lot of logic behind them in terms of how they cover each other, irrational rather than disorderly, okay? So this is just kind of the final example I have of how we can use different language to kind of paint a little bit of a clearer picture, okay? Are there any questions about this example?
Then I have a question. Could we switch, instead of the yellow line being the subject, could we have the 15-year-old children?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then maybe place the yellow line inside of the
Exactly.
parentheses?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. 15-year-old children, the yellow line covers, yeah, absolutely. And that can sometimes be a little bit nicer, actually. I think now, probably on second look, I think that would be a good way to describe this, because it's also shows to the reader that these lines aren't just lines, these are people, right? And that using those words also is effective, right? It creates a different understanding in the mind of the reader. It's not just a line, it's not just a data point, it's a person. Very, very good point there. Absolutely. Thank you. Any questions? So that's all I had about these ones. Let's take a look. Were there any questions about the other examples? Any questions about your own work that you would like to ask or offer?
Hello, Ajahn Allen. Yeah, I'm from Google Meet.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for.
In the
Yeah, thank you for.
Philippines,
Yeah. So I have a
students
question.
like using
You mentioned that.
comma, namely, then a colon.
Right.
What's your take on that?
I think it's extra. It's unnecessary. Yeah. And yeah, because it's going to imply the same thing if you just put the colon there and you never said namely in the first place. So namely, sometimes it can be effective if there is a clear, if you're giving a list and maybe there's some question about what you're going to list or are we talking about types? Are we talking about the presidents of the United States, namely blah, 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 right? But if I just say the presidents of the United States, it could be all 46. If I say namely, I'm being specific. Yeah. So there is that kind of added specificity there. And you're saying, oh, not all, but some. Yeah, that would be certainly one benefit. Any other questions about any of these? Maybe the process, when you explain your methodology, questions about this, transitions that are best. I mean, the difficult part about editing is it's a fingerprint, right, guys? Your words are your own. And so everyone has different needs, and maybe your needs in terms of editing will be completely different from one another. So I just kind of gave a bunch of different examples, and on the list, you can go through them. And you might say, oh, well, this is fine, this is perfect. Well, look at what I did to revise it and ask yourself, is it better? Maybe in your mind, doesn't make a big difference. But as a native speaker reading it, it does. And maybe just looking at some of the beginning, the originals and the revised examples can give you a look into the mind of a native speaker that is an editor, right? What flows for us? What makes it easier for us, or maybe makes your words more attractive? And I think a big thing is when you have a clear subject, verb, and the subject of your sentence, especially when it's some data, some information you're trying to pass along, make that clear, okay? What is doing it? What's the variable? What's the effect, okay? That is important. And then also, just take credit for your work. Give yourself compliments if you must, We achieved, we were able to accomplish. My research proposed a specific procedure for linguistic development, right? Like this is something you say, I did this, right? This study has done this. So take credit for it. Make it clear, the value. So there are some other examples on let's just take a look at some of these other examples since we have some more time. So we have some extra examples here.
You know that, right?
Yeah, sure, but I'll just show a couple of examples. We got a couple more, so just a couple more examples. So here, the story retelling technique was used in the following procedure. First, okay, so what should I do here? Should be extra examples. This is the workshop examples, no revisions.
Revision.
No revisions.
No.
Yeah, extra examples at the bottom. So the storytelling technique was used in the following procedure. First, what do we think about this? Yeah, colon, right? Give me a colon, then just, you don't even have to do first then, right? Because it's implied. So that would make your life a little bit easier. Just put a colon there. And then you don't even have to have first because the procedure is implied first. The first thing you list obviously will be first.
When we have the colon and we have like steps to do things, we need numbers again.
You can. It's not necessary. But if it is a step-by-step procedure, you can have numbers, and that's fine. I don't think that there's anything that's going to get in the way and make it seem less sophisticated.
Colon can be only the phrase, right?
It can't be a complete sentence, right? No. Yeah.
Okay, now phrase.
Yeah. Yeah. But we probably shouldn't have a sentence as in the list. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at this next one, avoiding abstractions. To be more apparent, Table 5 illustrated the overall picture of the achievements in retelling the story under the problem-solving components of all children participants. Okay. So, when I'm talking about the overall picture of the achievements in retelling the story, this is kind of unclear. I don't really know under the problem-solving components of all children participants.
Excuse me, Alan.
Right? So here we have
Excuse me,
the overall
Alan.
picture of the achievements in retelling the story under the problem-solving components of all the children participants. So here, there's a lot of here, right? We can make this a little bit clearer and at the same time explain. Okay, so how could I make this? What are we talking? The achievements in retelling the story under the problem-solving components of all the children participants. So whose achievements? The children's achievements, okay?
The overall picture of the children's achievement in retelling the story and the problem solving.
There you go. And it's easier, smoother, faster. Yes, 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 absolutely.
Every time you explain table, right?
I would say, yes, absolutely. So if we look at my, with my equals here. Okay. Oh, I didn't change it. Should be illustrates. Yes. Illustrates the overall picture of the achievements in retelling with relation to the problem of problem-solving components for all participants. I like the way that we talked about it before. Also, with relation to the problem-solving components. When we say under the problem-solving components, it's a little bit unclear too. Okay, so maybe with relation to, for all the participants, rather than of all children participants, children, it's implied, right? Let's look at another one here. We have, this study aims to create an online resource gathering the information of literary courses offered in the ranked universities according to THC and QS systems. Based on Kashu's 3 concentric circles, 24 universities, was collected, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we looked at this one before. The thing here, providing, the study aims to create an online resource providing information on the literature courses offered in the world's ranked universities according to THC and QS. Okay, so this first sentence here, right? The study aims to create, all right, a resource providing information rather than gathering the information. We are giving this to you. So always evaluate, what's the verb that is going to make me sound the best? You know, oh, I provide, I give it to you. I'm offering this to you, okay? And this one here, with the concern that there will be a lot of information regarding literary reading materials, there should be a technology in education that allows the content or materials to be systematically arranged. This will result in the convenience that the reading materials in specific areas of literature are well organized and easily reached by educators as well as learners. So, with the concern, okay? So, who's concerned, right? Who's concerned? We need to talk about, okay, the team, right? Due to the immense volume of information regarding literary reading materials, the team decided to look to technology for support, okay? There should be technology? No, we looked to technology. We felt the answer was to create. So you are going to describe your story. What did we do? We created it, okay? There should be technology. This will result in convenience. We did it. Say it, right? We felt the answer was to create an electronic database which systematically arranged the content and materials of literature courses around the world. This resource could ensure that reading materials are well organized and easily accessed by educators as well as learners. So, the team, what did we do? We made something, we created something. Take credit for your words, or for your work, right? And that would be, I think, the final thing I want to leave with you guys when we have that conclusion at the end of all your hours, all the hard work, all the research, all the methodology, and finding out, okay, what's the best way to test your ideas. All those hours, guys, make sure you end on a high note, okay? I know that you end on further recommendations for study, but especially your conclusion. Have that be a nice statement to end on. Something that the audience, even if it's a layperson like myself, can say, oh, I get it, that was valuable, okay? And I think that's an important step as well when you write, when you publish something. Take credit and make sure that final statement is strong. Okay? Okay, guys, so that is, unfortunately, I didn't really have anything more, but if there are any other questions, I'm happy to address them. And if you have any, we have about 30 minutes, so if you have your own work, you want me to take a look at anything you have a question about, I'm happy to give you some feedback as well. Yes?
In Indonesia, actually the Indonesian language, the structure is passive. So sometimes when we read the student work, especially in writing, usually they translate it, they translate it in their mind, but the sentence structure is usually imperative, especially in essay. So I'm really interested in your explanation that we can use active, especially for taking credits. Are there any conditions where we use the active or passive voice? What I know is that we use it like for variation and then taking credit and stuff. Are there any conditions for that?
Specific conditions? You know, it's kind of, it's one of these things, I've researched a bit about this myself, trying to, you know, do I use active or passive voice when I'm revising work? And there isn't a strong rule about it, right? The implication is that if the subject is important, you can use active voice. And especially when it's implied, you can just always use passive. And that passive voice, it does get confusing sometimes. So maybe if you are mixing it up with describing the methodology and then maybe a conclusion or a finding, could switch it up so it doesn't get a little bit overwhelming with too much passive voice. So this is one way that you can mix it up, but there is no hard and fast rule about it. And it definitely helps with the procedure, with describing methodology, but when it comes to what you are claiming and found in your work, I would always suggest to use active. Very good question. Thank you.
So I was, from my previous studies, I was taught to be systematically concise.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say his paper is argumentative paragraph writing.
Okay.
I was taught that when you start writing, just start from your topic, argumentative writing, just straight to the point. However, I read so many published articles. They mention like writing, the benefits of writing, and so on
Sure.
and so forth.
Sure.
Based on your editorial lenses.
Yeah.
Which one should we follow?
I like that idea of kind of giving context at the beginning. And the best way you can do it is kind of combine the two. I think that Dr. Sorbu did a great job in his paper. He said that narrative has always been a focus of communication and literary, or I think linguistic development, right? So he set the stage, and that kind of, as a reader, now I'm interested, now I'm hooked, and now give me the information, right? I like it. It's more poetic. It's more entertaining to kind of have that first hook statement to maybe attract the eye of the reader to maybe our work might be very dry and difficult to understand, but at least if we start with a statement that implies the value of my research or implies the value of my topic, it's a good way to kind of grab their attention. Yeah.
How long do you just
1-2 sentences. Yeah. It doesn't have to be very long. Yeah. You can have a couple sentences, maybe
more like an attention grabber?
Yeah. An attention grabber, but for academic work. Just a little bit of the context, a little bit of the overall scope or value of it. And maybe if you had to give a hook or a tag to a novice, someone who doesn't know about your topic, what would you say to them, right? And that can be a good segue into your more academic and maybe high-so language. Yeah.
So it's
Sophisticated language. Sophisticated, yeah. But I think that that's a great way to start, just to get them in. Yeah. A little abstract, yeah. Very good questions. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Yeah.
I have a question and a follow-up question.
Oh yeah. Good.
This one is primarily if you're like editing your own work, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about if we're doing it for somebody else?
Okay.
How much creative and linguistic room do you get as an editor?
It kind of depends on what you're editing and who you're editing it for. If you are editing, for myself, I tend to edit my colleagues' work, and if they have a lot of publications and I know about that, I tend to go with their words because I'm less likely to take freedoms myself with arranging or kind of maybe altering the content at all. But if it is someone that you maybe they don't have a lot of publication or equal to or less than you, perhaps you could have a little bit more freedom. And I always think it's important to communicate with the person you're editing their work and give them an idea of what you want to do or what they should expect before, and maybe ask them what they want. Because sometimes they're just looking for a quillbot, like they just want you to check, is the grammar all right? Does it sound, is it comprehensible? Or can you comprehend what we're saying?
You answered my follow-up question.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, it's difficult. Like, of course, when I'm editing Dr. Sarbu's writing, he's like well-renowned in the whole country. So I don't want to change his words. And oftentimes, one thing that I'll do, rather than just edit it, like I always change and I highlight in green. If I'm editing someone's paper that maybe I want to leave it to them to decide, a couple options. For the World Bank, I always edit in a Google Doc, and I track the changes so that the writer can just accept or reject your changes. If you edit in Word, you can just highlight in green. If I'm editing someone like Dr. Sorobud, I will put comments, and rather than change it, I could just put comments. Yeah, put the edits in comments. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Any other questions from anybody? Guys, I have never done anything like this before, so I wasn't quite sure what the format should be. So this is kind of just what I put together. I hope it was useful to you, and I just will try to do better next time, okay? So I really appreciate your time and attendance today, and best of luck on all of your publications, guys. Thank you so much. All right, my pleasure.
Maybe you do the stop recording first.
Okay.
Oh, she's here.
Okay, bye-bye, Ajahn Kim. See you.
See you, Aja. Can you hear me?